is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello and welcome to another 3 Mile Pod. I am your host today, Cole Manbeck, joined by Derek Young, publisher and editor of KSO over at On3, and we are pleased to have with us one of our favorite guests we have annually on 3 Mile, Wyatt Thompson, Kansas Broadcasting Hall of Famer, who's the senior director of sportscasting at K-State and the longtime voice of the Wildcats on the K-State Sports Network, is with us to talk some K-State sports. Before we get started, a reminder to go get stocked up with Holiday Distillery's Ben Holiday Bottled in Bond Bourbon. Football season is less than 45 days away, folks, and you'll be a popular host amongst your friends if you have some Ben Holiday Bottled in Bond Bourbon at your tailgate this fall. Terrific K-Staters over at Holiday Distillery. Go get out to your local liquor store and pick up some Ben Holiday Bottled in Bond Bourbon. Wyatt, thrilled to have you on. Always enjoy our discussions. How's the offseason been treating you?
You know, it's been really, really good, Cole. Good to be on with you guys. But it's always a fun time, right? But a fast time, the summer. I don't ever take as much time as I probably should off, but that's okay too. I'm sitting here daily working on football and basketball stuff, and that's all good. Good to be on with you.
Yeah, no, we always enjoy our discussions. Wyatt, you mentioned already, you were in Vegas for Big 12 football media days. Did you have a takeaway or two from discussions you had there or things that you heard?
You know, what really stood out to me is how much the athletes that I spoke to just got such a kick out of Vegas. And you guys were there, you know, it was 117, 118 degrees, and that didn't seem to even matter. It wasn't even on their mind. I think they loved the glitz and the glamour of it. They were excited about the new league. That stood out. And I think I would also say I was pretty impressed with visiting with a couple of the coaches that struggled last year. I'll give you an example. Coach Satterfield at Cincinnati. I mean, I got the sense that he feels like, I'm not saying they've arrived and they're going to win 10 games, but I think they feel like they're much better now and will have, you know, a much better opportunity to compete at this level in the Big 12 moving forward. They learned a lot, those new teams last year.
Is there anything you heard from Coach Kleiman, anybody from another team, or some of the Kansas State players in Las Vegas that made you leave Sin City thinking that Kansas State was better now than you thought when you even arrived there?
It's a very intriguing and interesting question for me because I've always felt like Coach Kleiman is such a consistent guy in what he does. I thought it was very interesting that K-State was picked as high as they were and not a single guy on the first team All-Big 12 team. I know everybody noticed that. I get it. But that really is kind of something that doesn't happen, right? Were they bothered by it? I don't think necessarily. They just are a bunch of grinders. And the 5 guys that K-State took, I don't know that you could get a lot better than that in terms of what they are, who they are. They don't care about a lot of that stuff. They just were there to have a good time, and they are really all focused in. I just love this group. Don't you guys? I mean, this is a really good group, and I've been telling everybody all summer that all of the returning guys, they've got a terrific group, and there are some that I can't wait to see perform, young guys that it's kind of time for them to be on the stage now, and I like that. I hope that answers the question the way you want, but I just, the consistency of which these guys work and the confidence of who they are and what they are and how they go about their business is pretty impressive in my mind.
Yeah, to that note about not having anybody on the All-Big 12 team, I almost got the impression that their take on it was like similar to ours, that there were probably a few guys deserving, but that there were probably not any certainties or locks based on, because some of this is based on past production. So maybe they were thinking DJ Giddens had a chance, Marquise Siegel had a chance, Desmond Purnell had a chance, but they are counting on a lot of guys, especially the offensive side of the ball, that haven't played a ton of college football yet.
That's a fact. And I think DJ is a really perfect example of what you're saying, DY, because think about what he did a year ago and his production and his season. And I literally saw a few weeks ago somebody's list of the top 10 running backs in the league, and he wasn't in the top 10, and I'm like stunned by that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's impossible that that's true.
Yeah, a lot of good running backs, because I would have picked Ollie Gordon and Devin Neal for the All-Big 12 team. But
sure,
DJ Giddens is right the next one, probably with R.J. Harvey and Taj Brooks.
Yeah, those guys are all steady, and I know a lot of people around the league really think that Abu Sama is really, really good too, and he is really, really good. But to not have DJ in the top 10 is a crime, in my opinion. But it also, I think, augments our point here that K-State's got a lot of really good football players, but maybe they don't have a Will Howard or a Cooper Beebe or a Ben Sennett kind of guy that sticks out to most of the people that vote for those kind of things.
What impresses, we'll just dive right in here, Wyatt. What impresses you most about Avery Johnson?
So much. This is a great topic, I think, because I've been here 22. This is my 23rd football season coming up at K-State, and I don't know that I've ever seen a young quarterback as quality and as confident as him. He doesn't really – he comes across so confident, but it's not cocky. And I love the way he leads for a guy who has played in 8 college games. I think that is a rarity. His football acumen also stands out. But the leadership thing on top of the way he's coached and just his God-given skills, it's impressive. Everything he does seems to impress most all of us, wouldn't you say? Just his approach, the summer work, the body. He's clearly at a different level trying to get to that 200-pound mark or what have you. And you got to work at it. This is not an easy thing. And he's still going to have some ups and downs, but I think the ups are going to far outweigh most young guys who are 8-9 games into a career.
I like the confident, not cocky thing, and I keep hearing that from a lot of people. And I've always thought that about Avery, and I've covered him since he was, a freshman or a sophomore in high school. And I think part of it is because even back then, and I think even before then, he prepared and did everything in his life to get to this point and probably beyond this point. So this is where he always thought he was going to get. So, and this was always the mission. And, to put it kindly, he's a player that knows he's really freaking good, but is not an a-hole about it.
Yeah.
Aside from there's other players, even in the Big 12, that are really freaking good and they know it, but they don't know how to not be an a-hole about it.
Yeah. He comes across, I think, for people that don't know about him or have been around him at all, as kind of that all-American guy, right? The long blonde hair, and he's got some swagger. There's no doubt about that. But it's I think real confidence is what I would call it, because he is really, really talented, and he knows it. And that's a good thing, but I think he uses it to his advantage, and I don't see it as a disadvantage in any way. And you can see, like a lot of really, really fine players, that people respond to him. I remember in the spring watching him on a play where they're going kind of in fast mode, and he drops a snap, and it didn't bother him at all. They just went right back to the next rep and moved on. I thought, you know what? A lot of young guys in this particular case would have, kicked the ball or thrown a fit or shown some type of disappointment or whatever. He just moved on. Go to the next one. I appreciated that. Not everybody that young can handle it like that.
We'll get to the on-the-field component of Avery and this offense, Wyatt, in a couple minutes here, but I do have to ask just to follow up to this. Look, we had Avery on the pod, and you've talked to him numerous times. We had him on the pod last year after his great game at Texas Tech, and I was just struck back then how incredibly mature he was. He was an 18-year-old true freshman that just came off such a great game and came on. Almost kind of intimidated me the way, I'm not used to talking to a guy like that is so mature for an 18-year-old. Have you ever in your going into year 23 seen a guy so young present himself in such a way with so much poise and composure?
No, I'm just being honest about that. And I've been blessed. I've been around a lot of what I describe as pretty good quarterbacks and young people that have handled themselves in exemplary ways. But this is just different from my perspective. I think when you see him on a regular basis and so many things stick out, it kind of blends, and you almost look at it like, boy, K-State is so fortunate to have this guy leading this group. That's the way I see it anyway. Everything that he does has purpose. Maybe that's the best way to say it. Whether it's the nutrition, the workouts away from everybody else, just, getting acclimated with teammates that are new. The work that he put in with Dante Cephas as an example last spring, and things like that. It all matters. I think that's the other thing that I would say. You can tell that everything matters with him. Everything.
Yep. Well said. Oh, go ahead, D.Y.
I was just going to throw in my comment. I've obviously interviewed every quarterback that has played for Kansas State since 2017, so not as long as Wyatt. And I can probably remember at least one time, like immediately, every single one of them has appeared uncomfortable at one time or another, whether that be on the field or even in a media setting. I've yet to see that one time from Avery Johnson.
Let me just say one more thing about that, too, because it's such a good point, really. Think about last year's bowl season and the prep with that. You've just lost Colin Klein. You go through 30 days of bowl prep to take on a North Carolina State team, and knowing that you're the guy, and it's his first real starting opportunity, and he really doesn't even have a position coach.
Yep.
Think about that, and it was like nobody really noticed it from that perspective. Coach Kleinman talked about that a little bit on the Catbacker tour and how he handled that and what have you. And then you flash forward a little bit later, the first part of January, and then we get to the Catbacker tour, and Matt Wells is out there with us, and Matt starts talking about how when he first got here, he was in and out of town and trying to recruit and all of that, and Avery wouldn't leave him alone. Let's do this. Let's look at this film. Let's sit down and talk about this. I think that kind of augments what we're talking about the type of guy he is. He can't get enough, and he just absorbs everything.
He never got too high, too, because I remember he could have right after the 5 touchdowns at Texas Tech, and I remember he was still the same dude after that game.
Yeah. I was very impressed, too, with the bowl from the standpoint of he really didn't – he threw away a few, and his numbers weren't eye-popping, but yet he didn't really make any mistakes, and he made enough plays to beat a pretty darn good football team. And I just felt like the way that entire 30 or 35 days played out, I don't know how you could not look at that and be pretty impressed with such a young player, frankly.
Well, we'll talk more Avery Johnson and K-State football on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball here when we come back from break. But as always, got to tell you about our friends over at Home Field Apparel. Get on over to homefieldapparel.com. Score 15% off on discount with discount code 3MAW24. That's right, we got a new discount code. We've updated it to 3MAW24. Get 15% off your entire order. 50-plus K-State items over at Home Field. Super comfortable, sleek hoodies, T-shirts. DY, I'm rocking the Big 8 shirt again, like I did on Monday's show, but trust me, I did wash it. It is clean. Wyatt, I've got if you can see here on the screen, Big 8 Champs 1977 T-shirt for basketball, and I think you started your broadcasting career in '76. You remember that? You remember that '77 Big 8 Champs team?
100%. That was such a special time in K-State basketball history from my perspective. I go back even a little bit farther than that, as a fan of K-State, and I think about those times and those kids that came along at that point. I was a big fan of like Lon Kruger. He was one of the guys that I looked up to right away, and then Mike and Chucky and some of those guys, and that will always be such a special time. Great coaches, awfully good players, lots of success in those days. That 77 team was good.
Well, we're going to have to hook you up with a Home Field shirt with this Big 8 Champs 1977 shirt, because I can tell you, Wyatt, it's probably the most comfortable T-shirt I actually own in my closet right now. Well, I'm rocking it again. It's my favorite new shirt from Home Field. You guys can own it too. Get on over there. 50-plus K-State items, homefieldapparel.com, discount code 3MAW24, and score 15% off at checkout.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Also want to tell you about our newest sponsors and partners on 3 Mall, Elanco, who has you covered with all of your home improvement needs. Locally owned company by K-Staters based out of Kansas City. Go check out Elanco. More to come on them in just a moment. But this segment here is brought to you by Elanco. And Wyatt, I got to ask you more about the offense. We heard Chris Kleiman talk about they needed to evolve their passing scheme heading into this season. And you already mentioned Matt Wells and the Connor Riley aspect of this. But what changes do you envision them doing on the offensive side of the football with Connor Riley as the offensive coordinator, Matt Wells, co-OC, quarterbacks coach? And what maybe changes are you excited to see as what they've talked about?
Another really, really quality subject, I think, Cole, because I think there are a lot of things at play here, meaning at the core, Kansas State football is going to want to run the ball. Okay? I think we all understand that. And yet I think with the people that they have around Avery, I think they feel like they can play a lot of different ways, a lot of different speeds, a lot of different looks, and I think that's what you're going to have. I love the combination of Connor Riley and Matt Wells from the standpoint of, Connor's an offensive line guy, right? And he's a, Kansas beef dude, right? And they like to be physical and tough. And then you've got Matt Wells, who has been a head coach a couple of different times. He's tutored some awfully good players. He probably likes the little quicker pace and some more movement. So I think in combination, you're going to see a lot of different things. Would you be surprised, as an example, to see Dylan Edwards and DJ Giddens on the field a lot at the same time? Maybe not always, but it's going to happen. You could also see, with the ability that they have at tight end, I think you could see 3 tight ends in the game at a certain point too. It's really, I think there are a lot of ways that they can play. I think they're excited about that. And I think I can't wait for the camp to get going to watch and just kind of see what they're implementing, because we don't really know for sure, honestly, but you just get a sense with all of that on the table. They're capable of playing at a lot of different speeds and a lot of different ways. And they're if they get quality play from everybody that they think they're going to get quality play from, they're going to have an awfully fine offensive football team. That's my perspective anyway.
Yeah, Elanco, premier home improvement company based out of Kansas City. Just terrific stuff from Wyatt there as we look ahead to the K-State offense. Go check out Elanco. Like I said, locally owned since they started in 1986, and the best part, Elanco is owned and operated by great K-Staters. If you need premium window replacements or looking to do a bathroom remodel, Elanco has you covered. Need new siding on your home? They've got you covered as well with top quality service, and you don't need to live in KC. Elanco covers much of western Missouri and northeast Kansas. So if you live in Manhattan, Emporia, Topeka, Wichita, or small towns like I'm originally from, Rossville, Elanco will come your way and take care of your home improvement needs. Go to elancohome.com. That's ALENCO home.com, and check out all the services they offer. You can also give Sam, who's another great K-Stater, a call at 913-961-2165, and he'll get you taken care of and answer any questions you have. Go support Elanco, terrific local business, family owned and operated by wonderful K-Staters. So Wyatt, what was your reaction when they hired Matt Wells? I'm curious. So there was a lot of anxiety when Colin Klein left and a few days after. And you wondered, was Avery Johnson going to transfer? What was going to happen at the offensive coordinator position? And then Chris Kleiman not only brings in a guy that I think we all view as a really solid OC, but a guy that's been a veteran head coach at multiple stops, including the Big 12. What a luxury that is to have a guy there in the position that he's in. And what do you make of the hire?
I loved it from the get-go because I had conversations with Coach Kleiman about Matt Wells previous, and he always talked about, just what a really, really fine man he is and what a really good football coach he is. And I thought, what a good situation to be able to have a guy like that come in here that has tutored some awfully fine players, with Avery being such a young, talented guy. I just thought that was a nice home run, if you will, right out of the gate. It's the fact that he's been a head coach and the fact that he has coached people like Jordan Love. How much weight do you think that holds with Avery, right? I mean, to me, that's the thing that really matters here. And when you get to know Matt a little bit, which I've done over the last few months, there's just something about the guy that you can tell he's a real quality person, but also a really good teacher with patience. I just like everything about him so far. And I'm friends with the guys at Tech. Chris Level says he's one of the best guys out there. And that's kind of what I've seen in the few months he's been around. I'm very impressed with him. And I know, I guess I'll say this too. I remember when Scotty Hazelton left, Coach said, it's going to be okay. Joe Klanderman will be all right. He'll do a fine job. That's worked out. Colin Klein left. He said, hey, we got a plan here. It's going to be okay. It's turning out to be okay.
Dylan Edwards, now in a Kansas City uniform, was supposed to be, didn't happen. 1 year later, we finally do get to see it. What are your impressions so far? What do you anticipate seeing on the field this year?
Wow. This is an interesting subject for me because, you go back to Avery and what he does for this football team as a player. But, he was a pretty big influence, I think, in getting Dylan here, even if you consider it being a year past what you really had hoped for, right? Mm. He is a difference-making player speed-wise. That, to me, is the thing that stands out. But the one thing that's hard to get by for me is what you had said early on there in our visit about how humble he's been, how hardworking he's been, and appreciative of being here. I think that is a very obvious thing right now, that I'm not saying he didn't have, a good experience last year, because I think it probably was. But I think he's more excited right now about being here, being able to play, a little bit closer to family, and even maybe more important, what this group can be. I think, I don't want to speak for Dylan in any way, shape, or form, but I think he's pumped up about what he sees around here and how things are done here, and he's not the only one.
They can throw the ball to Dylan Edwards, but they get tight ends. You got to replace Ben Sinnott. I know you're really, really high on Garrett Oakley. How do we think that position room is rounding into form at this point? Well,
let's be honest. Ben Sinnott turned out to be, over his last couple of years, especially his senior season, a wonderful talent. I think a lot of the coaches believe that Garrett Oakley has a lot of the same qualities in him. He's a little bit different body type. But he is getting bigger and stronger as he goes. He can really run. He can catch the football. And he has enough speed that I think you can move him too. As an example, I wouldn't be stunned if we see him, lined up in the slot occasionally or even wide. He has that kind of ability, and would be a really hard matchup if he's in the slot, as an example, with say, Wolf or whoever it might be in the game. Swanson, as an example, also could be in there at the same time. Brings a lot to the table. And I've seen things that he has done in practice where I've just went, whoa. I don't know that we've seen a ton of that on the field yet, but I think we're going to. And I'm really excited about that.
And he's just got to stay healthy, right?
That's it, yeah. If he stays healthy, DY, he's got a chance to maybe be, I don't want to put too much pressure on the guy, but I think he could be one of the breakout guys in this league in 2024. I think the coaches feel that strongly about what he brings to the table. And he's got some toughness to him and really loves to compete. I mean, that's the thing for me that stands out. I mean, the reps that he gets, whether it's spring, fall, camp, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. You can tell he's a baller.
Well, you put Garrett Oakley on our radar last year Wyatt, before I think he'd even played a snap. He was banged up early in the season, missed a few games, and you mentioned to us to watch out for Garrett Oakley when we had you on early in the season in 23. And once I watched him play, I was like, man, this guy can move. He moves different. The way the athletic traits, the profile that he has, he looks like he could be an all Big 12 type tight end if he can stay healthy. So, the question will be, what does K-State have behind him as well? Will Swanson, obviously, can he be more of a receiving threat this year? Can one of the young guys, Will Ancio, Andrew Metzger, step up as redshirt freshmen? So it'll be interesting to watch. I guess we'll stick on the subject of pass catchers here. And I hope people know we're not ignoring the defense. We'll talk about the defense here in just a moment. We'll, I feel like we probably always start off with the offense. It feels sexier to talk about, but we'll definitely get to the defense. Joe Klanderman's been outstanding on that side of the football in the Chris Kleiman era. Wide receiver, Keegan Johnson was a name that consistently was brought up at Big 12 Media Days, and we heard all about Keegan last year as well. Battled injuries last season, battled injuries at Iowa. His redshirt freshman year, if it was true freshman season, whichever it was, but he was banged up some, missed most of the season that second year at Iowa after an outstanding first year with the Hawkeyes. How excited are you to see the next step that Keegan Johnson takes? And maybe what did you observe last year? Like, it looked like a guy that was maybe mentally battling those injuries and just couldn't be himself on the field. We just saw glimpses of it. Jace Brown's the name that everybody's going to talk about, but Keegan certainly has the traits to be an elite wide receiver for this team as well. I'm curious what you're seeing there.
Well, if you go back to pre-camp a year ago, and the summer that he had, the coaches were just giddy about Keegan and his body, his catching ability, all of the type of individual he is. And then it's not too far into camp where he gets dinged up, and he just never really got very healthy in the early part of the year and in the first half of the year, frankly. He was a lot better in the second half, but because he was healthier and more comfortable. And I think it was probably really frustrating for him. At least that's my sense. But he did hang with it. And I believe that he is a much better football player than we've even seen from last year going into this year, or at least can potentially be that. When you look at this group of players and what they bring to the table, if you don't have to lean on him to be that everything guy, and I think that's the case here, I think he can even be better than he was when he was playing really well towards the end of last year. He's got really good talent, and I'm just praying that he stays healthy because he can be a guy. He's not the only one. And you mentioned Jace. I loved what he did a year ago. I think there's more in that tank. He's a competitive guy. When you look at those two, with Oakley, with Dylan Edwards, and there are other guys we'll probably mention here shortly, but he is a guy, Keegan, that could really elevate this team to a little different spot from my perspective.
They're going to need some breakout players on the offensive line as well, because you got some, 4 3-year starters to replace essentially. I think Andrew Leingang could be the key. Would you agree with that, or is there a couple other guys you'd mention as well?
It's an interesting question, and I guess the short answer was yes, I would agree with it. I've been a fan since he showed up here, and I said to this to him the other night when we were in Hayes. He came out to Hayes with Gavin Myers and Hadley Panzer, and I've always enjoyed Andrew. I think he's a really, really good young guy, has everything in perspective, and I complimented him for being patient and learning and developing, and he's done all of that. He's a really strong guy. I think he will be one of the key dudes. I really, truly do. I look at this group, and I fully understand that they lost an All-American left guard and 3 6th-year guys, and that's hard to replace. But everybody knows, it's no secret, I've always been a big fan of Hadley Panzer, right? I've always been a fan of Andrew. I think up and above and beyond that, they don't have a lot of household names. Most people probably that you would talk to wouldn't know who Easton Kilty is. They may or may not know who Carver Willis is, or Sam Hecht, or Taylor Portier, but those guys are pretty good football players. John Pastore is another one. His time is coming. So I think they're continuing to evolve and get better. But from my perspective, that's where everybody's going to watch. Can this offensive line be what everybody hopes they can be?
Yeah, just because of what their upside could be, but perhaps what their starting point actually is. Game one, I think that's probably the group that by the end of the season we're going to be that position improved the most from game 1 to game 12.
One thing that I would say too is I think there are some situations here where you have some versatility that can help them. As an example, I think we all understand that, Hadley Panzer can play multiple positions, right? And I go back to even Cooper. I remember having a conversation after the season last year, after the bowl game with Connor Riley, and I was asking him about Cooper, and he said, the kid played every position here at K-State other than center. And guess where he's going to play with the Cowboys? Center. And that's probably going to turn out to be true. The idea here is, though, they work on stuff like that. And I think Sam Hecht can play center superbly well, but I also think he could be a guard if needed. Andrew's been a guy that they can move to, right? And there are other younger players that are coming along that I think could help him too. I'm anxious to see some of those guys. I mentioned Pastore, Drake Beckwith. I like. There are other kids in the program that I think they're not quite there yet, but I really like the entirety of the group and the way they're coached, and I think it's got to be the key to the offense this year for sure. But I think they'll be fine. They're going to get better. We know that.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see Line Gang, and then I'm really fascinated to see Pastore and see the steps, because we heard a lot of buzz about him last year heading into the year, and we know he battled some injuries early on in the season, but he has the potential. He's got the size, the physicality to be a terrific offensive tackle down the road, and if he can become that, they potentially could slide Easton Kilty into the interior of the offensive line. But I think the thing that's so great about Kilty is just the versatility aspect of it, similar to, not the saying he's the same player as Cooper Beebe, but the fact that he's played tackle, he's played guard on both right guard, right tackle, left tackle. He's played 4 of the 5 positions in his career on the offensive line. So he's a guy that you could shift around to get the best group out there as possible. Looking forward to seeing that. I guess to put a bow maybe on the offensive discussion, Wyatt, I know this is going to be a hard question to answer, so I'll frame it up as potential. When we talk about potential of this Kansas State offense, and you look at the skill position talent, potentially, is this the most skill position talent you've seen on this offensive side of the football in the Chris Kleiman era?
I'd say probably yes, just because of the potential is the key to the statement there. We've talked about Keegan, we've talked about some of those other guys, but, Dante Cephas, Trace Spivey, those types of guys. There are others. I said this a little while ago. I think there's still more from Jace Brown. If he gets fortunate and Jaden Jackson plays up to what his potential is, I think you could be helped there. I've always been a guy too that there's going to be another guy that's probably a surprise. Will it be a true freshman like a Jace Brown? Who knows? But Jaden has a chance because of his skill set. He just needs to be more consistent. If he gets that figured out, then I think they are as good as they've been. And Dylan and Avery help that a ton, of course. Yeah. But so does Garrett Oakley, and so does several other guys.
Yeah, I'll always forget to mention DJ, who we talked about earlier, is just an all Big 12 type running back, and so want to continue to emphasize his name because it's easy for me to slip up and say Dylan Edwards a lot and talk about the new toys, but right. Man, there's a lot of depth on the offensive side of the football when it comes to skill talent. Transitioning to the defense, Wyatt, just what's your excitement level for this secondary as you look at what they've got there with Siegel, a guy that Chris Kleiman lights up about whenever he brings up his name, Jordan Riley at safety, Ball State transfer, another guy we're hearing a lot of buzz on, You got VJ Payne heading into his third year of significant playing time. Feel good about that safety room. And then at corner, Keenan Garber, Jacob Parrish, 2 veteran guys.
I love the secondary. And there are other guys that are going to be factors there that you didn't mention. But those guys that you did mention, I think it's such a break that K-State gets a 6th year from Keenan Garber as an example. And we all know that Jacob Parrish isn't the tallest corner in the Big 12, but he is a really good cover guy. He's very tough. I just so appreciate, just how much he competes. And he's not afraid of anybody. And he's a supremely confident athlete. I think VJ is one of the most underrated players on the football team. I don't know how you can not be around a guy like Marquise Siegel for 5 minutes and not be impressed with what he is and what he's become. I said to a group the other night that this is a young man who at North Dakota State was a factor, but he wasn't like one of their stars as a young player, right? And he's just gotten better and better and better and plays with really a lot of passion. I just appreciate him so much. But there, you look at some of those other guys. I really like Colby McAllister as an example. They got a couple of young corners that I think are developing. And you can look at some of the older guys too, like Tyler Nellen. There's another guy that last year got hurt, SEMO transfer. We never got to see the real guy there. Another example, Justice James. Justice is a guy that is going to help him. But younger guys and you hear these names all the time, but they're not really well-known names now. But I think by November, everybody's going to know who guys like Wesley Fair is, or Mikey Bergeron, or Jack Fabris. we haven't mentioned Jordan Dunbar, the transfer from Rice. I think he could be a factor. So I think that first-line group is real good. And I think the backups could also play a lot of football at K-State this year.
Based on what I've heard, because Chris Kleiman actually, to me, raved about Jordan Dunbar when we spoke in Las Vegas. We know how he feels about the safeties. I think Justice James is really good. You named 3 or 4 safeties that are going to help Kansas State this year that probably won't even start. And perhaps one of the more raved about players in Vegas was Jordan Riley as well. It just makes me think that there's always a question mark or a concern, or at least something that's going to keep a coach up at night. But I think, I wouldn't, at least to begin, we'll see what, injuries can really change your mind on things quickly.
Sure.
But I don't really have any bad thoughts or concerning thoughts about the secondary, whereas maybe a month ago, I probably looked at the quarterback room and wondered about depth a little bit, but the young guys are coming on, and I think Justice James and Jordan Dunbar will probably be solid enough in that respect.
And I think that's well said because it takes a little bit of pressure off a couple of young guys like a Kenigel Thomas or, somebody like Donovan McIntosh, the kid from St. Louis who I love. I think both of those kids are going to be dudes in time. Yeah. But they're last year you could see their skills. They just were a little bit behind in some of the structure things, and that doesn't last forever. Once they start to get some things figured out and start just reacting as opposed to having to think, life becomes a little bit better. And I think that time's coming for both of those guys too. So there's some depth there for sure, 100%.
And if I have any questions about depth, I know Coach Kleiman has mentioned offensively. I think he mentioned offensive line, just wanted to shore up some spots, but he's at the linebacker room, and that's probably where I would look. But if Alec Marinko is a dude, and that's the transfer they added from New Mexico, you probably feel fine there because Austin Romaine can be that depth point. On the outside spots, the depth is probably going to have to come from guys that haven't played much.
That's true. And then that includes a guy that got hurt last year and played really well before he got hurt. And you're shaking your head. Yes, you know who I'm going to talk about, right? Don't you? He's missed him. Good body, good athlete, big motor. He's a guy that could really help. There are other guys there too. I'm not saying there isn't. I think Rex Van Wy, as an example, made some big strides last year, to be honest with you. Terry Kirksey, I think, was a little bit lost. I think he's got a chance to maybe be something a little bit better there. But, man, I mean, knock on wood, if K-State can be healthy, I mean, you think about those outside guys with Austin Moore and Des Purnell. Seriously, those guys are really, really good football players. I'm really proud of Desmond, with the position change, and he's bigger and stronger and very confident guy, makes a lot of plays. I'm like you. I think people are going to question that a little bit. And if the New Mexico transfer, if Alec's a guy to go with Austin Romaine, and then maybe you get, a couple of other guys in there. Now, you start to feel pretty. You mentioned Bo Palmer. Bo Palmer's not the world's best athlete, but that dude is tough as hell. I'm just going to say it. He is tough as hell, and he will give you everything he's got.
The high upside, depth guy on the outside. I don't know how quickly he can get up to speed because he's switching a position, but Cam Salas, he can play. Yeah.
Knew where you were going on that one, buddy. And I think he is a thick, really tough athlete. I think it's a good move for him. I think we'll be talking at some point that what Dez has done, we'll be talking about Cam Salas in that way, don't you?
Yeah, I don't know when the light bulb's going to come on, but I think he's a future stud starting linebacker at Kansas State.
Yeah, I agree.
I love it when you guys can finish each other's sentences with names here, because it basically reaffirms that everybody is hearing similar things or has similar thoughts here on some of these young guys with a lot of upside. And speaking of upside, you mentioned redshirt freshmen in the secondary, Wyatt and Fabris and those guys that could potentially play in the next year or so. Defensive end, you look at that defensive line room. Obviously, Brendan Mott, Cody Stuffle being back for an extra season here, but you got a lot of high upside guys at DN. Chidi Obiizor, who we saw a glimpse of last year and just looks like a physical specimen that I think is more ahead than what we thought he would be when he came in. I remember DY saying, when they recruited him, might be a nose tackle that they try to beef up a couple years down the road. And then the fact that he was ready to go last year was really impressive.
You mentioned offensive line at some point. He's a freak athlete.
You got Chidi, and then you've got Jordan Allen, Ryan Davis, some of those guys. What's the excitement level, or what are you seeing or hearing on those guys?
What I would tell you is when you talk to Chris Kleiman or Joe Klanderman about the defensive ends, those young guys, they know what they've got in Brendan Mott and Cody Stufflebeat, right? Those guys are a model of consistency in who they are and what they do. But they just glow when they start talking about Chidi Obiizor and Tobi Osinsami and Ryan Davis and Jordan Allen. I mean, that's a lot of bodies there. Didn't mention Donovan Ryman. He can help too, I think.
Travis
I think he's some. Yeah. I mean, there's I probably feel about as good with that group as I have in a while, just from the potential side of things. My goodness, I think Chidi's at 270, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's a big man, explosive guy. And when I first saw Jordan Allen, I'm going, wow, can't wait till that cat's ready, right? So there's a reason for the excitement for those guys. These kids their time is coming, and it's coming sooner rather than later, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think they're getting ready sooner than even the coaches thought they'd be.
Exactly right. They want to be good players. That's the other factor there that, always is such an important thing, because you can tell even from the beginning, you could just see that they were competitive athletes and we're going to get there at some point, and it's happening.
I forgot to mention Toby Wyatt. I mean,
yeah.
Do you foresee a possibility that he's another Khalid Duke type that could slide into that?
Could be. He's just really an explosive guy. Long, athletic, strong, getting stronger. I think there's a lot of potential there with him. I really, truly do. I mentioned a couple of times being out there speaking. I was in Hayes the other night and was there with Gavin Myers, who's from Hayes, and he brought Andrew Langang with him and Hadley Panzer. And I asked each of those guys, give me a guy that's going to be a breakout guy for you. They all mentioned 3 different guys, but one was Toby. Okay? And I thought that was a good thing. I think they are very impressed with those guys. Some of those guys occasionally have to block a Jordan Allen type, and it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. It's just that's a good feeling, honestly.
And it's good that Brennan Mott came back, because if he doesn't, that's just a lot of youth without, so to speak, an adult in the room.
Right. And he is the adult in the room, isn't he? I mean, he's a sixth-year guy. I remember talking to Stuff at the bowl game, both prior and after, and you know, he said to me at one point, I said, "Any chance you'd come back?" Nope, I'm not ready to. I'm going to move on. Time to make some money. And the next thing you know, he comes back. I so appreciate him. He's a brilliant student. He's going to have a heck of a career ahead of him, I think. But those two guys, having them back to bring those other guys along with just their experience in that. And they've been through a lot too. You know, they haven't necessarily been frontline guys all along either, but they do everything right, and special teams and what have you, and just rock solid guys. And I think that goes back to what we talked about with Kleiman and where K-State is right now. I mean, you talk to anybody around the league out in Vegas, they all say Kleiman is so impressive with the way he, you know, structures things and the way they play. And I just think everybody appreciates him for his consistency and has built a lot of depth on this football team over the last couple of 2 or 3 or 4 years.
I think the secondary can be outstanding. I think the linebackers are going to be solid, good enough, not a weakness by any means. And Desmond Purnell, I think, has a chance to be one of the best players on the team. Defensive ends, a lot of youth, but you could probably get after the passer much better than you could last season, and that's an upgrade in itself. But I think for this defense to be as good as it can get, the nose guards were okay last year. I think they have to be better this year.
Yeah, and I think that's totally accurate, and I think they're more than capable of doing that. I think we saw Uso struggle through some injuries. When he was healthy, he was pretty solid. I think he has a better handle now than he did then going into his second year. I have to be honest with you. I am a guy that really is a big fan of Damian Ilalio. I think he's a strong dude who loves football. I think you're going to see him step up. I'm not sure what K-State will get out of some of those other guys just yet. I think Asher, as Tom Mazewski as an example, has gotten better. We'll see on some of those guys. The kid from Butler, you know probably better than I do of what he can bring, but I know when he initially committed to K-State, the coaches were really pumped up about his size and his athleticism. So hopefully he can get in the mix too.
Yeah, he looks good coming off the bus. Cole knows this. My, I guess, hot take this offseason has been Damian Ilalio is the best of that group by the end of the season.
Yeah. I'm just going to say this again. He is really strong, and I love those guys. K-State's had a few guys like him over the years that were really good football players / wrestlers in high school, and they understand leverage and have good hands and feet. Damian is exactly that. There's nothing about him that I don't like as a football player. He loves the game and really gets after you, man. And I wish we had Eli Huggins back, but who doesn't, right? I mean, those kind of guys don't grow on trees. But I think if these guys develop, I think they could help. The other thing too is with Jordan Allen's size, as one example, you could slide him inside occasionally too. I think they have some possibilities there that not everybody talks about too. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, Ilalio could definitely be a breakout guy this year, got a lot of valuable experience last year, and then they're much bigger at defensive end, which I think was a priority this year. They got bigger on the edge. These are more prototypical 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" guys with length and reach on the edge. So I think that's a big part of it as well and was a focus for this staff. Wyatt, just real quick, something that's often overlooked, special teams. K-State goes out and hires a guy, Nate Katzer, who has multiple NFL stops in his career, gets him out of the NFL. I think it's a tremendous hire. And just to be frank with you, I mean, special teams last year, if you look at like Brian Freemau's FEI ratings for special teams, K-State had its worst special teams unit overall. last year that they'd had since 2010. And it's obviously been a huge component of K-State football over the years and a big part of their success. Kick return efficiency, according to Fremont, last year was 115th in the country out of around 132 of 33 FBS teams. Now they add Dylan Edwards in. They have potential there, assuming they're going to probably use him on some special teams, some return units. But getting a guy like Katzer and then the potential of an explosive guy like Edwards in the return units, like, you think they can make a significant jump back to being an elite special teams unit this year?
You hit that ball as hard as Otani hit it in the All-Star game the other night. I'm all over both of those guys. Nate is very, very impressive. My first time of being around him was back on the Stereo Drive in Scott City back in April. And I'm not talking about him. It's what he was saying about K-State football. And I think he is a guy that will fit into the mix here very handily. And with his experience at the pro level, and I think you're right, K-State wasn't what they wanted to be last year, in all honesty, in the special teams area. And if they can improve like they feel like they can, you're going to see a difference there, I think, just in scheme and all of those types of things, whether it's the covers or the returns. They've got a really pretty quality kicker in Chris Tennant. They do have to replace a guy that seems like to me they haven't changed snappers in about 6 years, but they always have a good one, right? Now, can you get Dylan ingrained to that? And there'll be other guys. I think there are some other potential guys on punt and kick return that could be pretty salty. Dylan certainly is right at the top of the list, but I'll say it this way. Nate's impressive. Dylan's impressive. I believe that you can expect an uptick in special teams play this year. How's that?
Yeah, get a kick return, punt return score, start another little streak there. They didn't get one last year.
That's right. Yeah, and it's time, right? The kick numbers last year were not good, and everybody knows it. And sometimes, a little new blood won't hurt at all. And Nate's a Kansas guy. He's from Scott City, and 16 years in the NFL is a really cool thing. And I just know that the players that I've talked to about him, they're really impressed with just how, I guess, detail-oriented he is with everything he's doing. That's exciting.
Well, DY, they had a punt return that was called back in the bowl game against NC State. That was a very questionable call that could have continued that. It felt terrible for Seth Porter to, in his last game, have that taken away from him on that punt return touchdown. But K-State ended up still winning the game as a result and scored a touchdown later on in that drive and killed a lot of clock. So, Wyatt, appreciate the conversation. I know we kept you probably longer than we should have, but always enjoy the dialogue and the discussion and appreciate the heck out of you, and looking forward to another year on the call with you, the voice of the Wildcats, and hoping we make a run to Arlington and Big 12 championship again and get the Big 12 championship trophy back in Manhattan.
I totally appreciate your kind words, and I want to throw a little bit back your way from the standpoint of what you guys do in covering the Cats, because I have people ask all the time about you guys and the Three Mile podcast and how good it is and how informative it is. And so I'm going to say I appreciate the opportunity to be on with you. That's a good thing. And I know you guys are kicking it. Keep it up. And like you, I think K-State's got a real shot to get to Arlington, Texas. They got a lot of work to do between now and then, but I can't wait to get it going. And, hey, next year we're going to be talking about an early start, but it seems early this time, doesn't it, with that August 31st date? And their first practice will be like the 31st of July, so we're right around the corner.
Yeah, maybe next year we'll bring you on from Ireland.
There you go. That sounds like a winner.
All right. Well, hey, Wyatt, appreciate the kind words. We couldn't do it without terrific guests like you guys, that you and others at K-State that are willing to jump on with us all the time and give us great content. So thank you. Go check out our sponsors, as always, folks. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Go check out Holiday Distillery. Get your Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon, and Alenko for all your home improvement needs. Thanks, Wyatt, and thanks, DY. Thanks for listening all to another 3 Mile Pod.